It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Miami Redhawks head men's and women's swimming and diving coach, Coach Hollie Bonewit Cron. How are you doing today?
Doing very well, Brandon. Thank you.
Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching college swimming?
Absolutely. I was a college swimmer myself. So I swam at a Division I level, became a NCAA All-American, made it to NCAA's 2 years, and went on to the U.S. Olympic trials in my senior year. And then when I went on to Georgia Southern for my graduate program, I wanted to really get on deck and be part of a swimming and diving program. And then at that point is when I really decided I wanted to make a career out of it. So while I was a psychology major in undergrad and sports psychology in graduate, I really took those sports psychology skills and made them more applicable and became a swim coach. And that's kind of what launched my career.
What was your college experience like going to Ohio State, becoming a swimmer?
Well, at Ohio University is where I swam. And so my experience was a unique one. I was not very good. I was honestly not very talented as a young athlete. I didn't get started until high school. I swam a little bit as an age grouper, but it was really seeing my brother take off at the University of Florida, where he was an All-American and ultimately made it to Olympic trials, that made me say to myself, that's exactly what I want to do too. So when I first started looking at universities, I had every intention of going to Indiana, and that did not pan out. I had a very negative experience when I went there. Those coaches are no longer there. I will make that very clear. Those not the current coaches. And so when I came back from my recruiting trip, the head coach at Ohio University at that time was Greg Warner, and he took me under his wing and said he would offer me a small scholarship. And from there, it just really took off.
What was it like, obviously, getting into college coaching after your playing career?
After my swimming career, it was a lot of kind of putting my goals and aspirations as an athlete aside and really channeling those into being a coach and mentoring young student athletes themselves. So really all the things that I felt like worked for me as a student athlete, I could then translate into those that were, wishing to be coached by me and to be mentored by me. So it was unique as far as all my stepping stones that I took and how I learned to be what I feel the best head coach for the athletes I currently coach. But it was a really great experience, and it helped me just kind of understand the value of being in college athletics and being a student athlete.
What was it like going to Georgia Southern to be a part of the swimming program?
Going to Georgia Southern was actually a really unique experience. At that time, they didn't have an assistant coaching position available, or even a graduate assistant position. All my cohorts in my graduate program, they were becoming teaching assistants, and I didn't want to do that. So I contacted the head coach, Tracy Leone, at the time, and I asked her, would there be any opportunity for me to use my assistantship with the program? She said she would look into it, and they basically created the program for me. Halfway through my second year, I ended up becoming the head coach. And so that was a great opportunity for me to really take on some bigger responsibilities. And while it was only for a few semesters, it was still enough of a responsibility that I said to myself, this is something I want to do one day.
What was that experience like, obviously being the head coach for the first time in your career?
It was very humbling. I was not prepared for it. I will be honest. I can certainly say that now. I made some mistakes. And from those mistakes, I'm now able to use that in my future and really look back on it. Nowadays I can talk about it anecdotally, but, for the longest time, I would say I had so much to learn, and I did over the course of time. I mean, I'm in my 21st year of coaching right now, and those are my first 2 years of coaching. So I am happy to say that I did make some mistakes. I think many coaches do. And, the best way to learn from those is to really address what those mistakes are and try to make those changes.
What were some of the things during your time at Georgia Southern that you accomplished?
I think our accomplishments were very competitive. I think we did a good job being competitive. I think the bigger accomplishment was building the relationships with the women on that team. I think that was a bigger step in the program in what that team needed. Tracy had done a great job. I was there to, bridge that gap. And I felt like it was a lot more relationship building. And while that team was very competitive, it was certainly an opportunity for them to see the value of being part of an athletic program.
What was it like, obviously, going from Georgia Southern to the SEC, going to Florida Gators?
I get that question a lot. I get the question of what it was like there. It was intense. I can't describe it any other way. And to this day, I will always value that as one of my most treasured time in coaching, because the way it happened is when I was at conference for Georgia Southern, the coaches at Florida ended up being at the meet. They talked to me. They said they had a position open. I ended up interviewing and getting hired, and I was thrown into the deep end of the pool. There's no other way to say it. There was a lot of eye-opening experiences. And I will say my first year at Florida was Ryan Lochte's freshman year. Ryan Lochte being the Olympian that he is. Ryan Lochte was barely a junior national level athlete at the time he came into Florida and developed into the Olympian that he is today. And I got to see that development. So, my transition from being an athlete and then 2 years as being a graduate assistant / head coach to going into Florida was a huge learning curve. And I am so thankful that I was able to have an opportunity like that. And basically the Band-Aid was ripped off, to learning so much.
Of course, what were some of your accomplishments at Florida? Obviously, you said seeing Ryan Lochte perform. What was some of your other accomplishments?
Well, the accomplishments really go towards the head coach, Greg Troy. But for me being an assistant, I would say that so many of those accomplishments would be, again, working with athletes on the side. I know there was one young lady, she made the NCAAs her freshman year and did not make it her next 2 years. I was charged with the responsibility to get her back to that meet. And I'll just never forget the relationship I built with her. She did amazing that year. Her pace in warm-ups for her primary event was completely off. I probably even lied to her, if I'm being honest, about what her pace was, because it was not good. And, she had to get over that mental hurdle, and she did. And she ended up qualifying her senior year. So that was one of my biggest accomplishments. I would say really just trying to honor Greg Troy and his leadership and his direction for the program is probably another one. And, all the relationships in between. There were so many athletes there that I still talk to this day. So it was a good time.
What was it like going to Florida, which was in the SEC, to obviously the ACC with Miami?
It was a little different. It was different not only in terms of the conference. It's just a different conference altogether. For one big example, the SEC is a combined meet. Men and women compete at the same conference championships. ACC's is not. You have the women's meet first and then the men's meet the week after. That was different. And also my role at Florida was a full-time assistant swim coach. And at Miami, I was a volunteer. My husband's job had taken us down to South Florida. And so I did not want to break in my resume, and I wanted to keep coaching. So I became a volunteer. But what was really great about that is Christy Shevchunas, the head coach at the time, and Trisha Harm, who is now Trisha Adams, she was also an assistant. They really let me harness my skills and be able to coach a small group, that I feel did rather well in the ACC. So it was a really good experience. I had less responsibilities administratively, and I could just walk on the deck and coach. So that was really unique about that awesome experience.
What was it like, obviously, getting your first time head coaching job at Nevada for both the men's and women's swim team?
So it was at Nova Southeastern, which is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. When I got that job, we had no idea. My husband and I had no idea they were going to be starting a program, but they had a pool on campus. And then they decided to start a men's and women's program. And that is something I feel I've done a really good job of understanding and coaching, is both a men's and women's program. There are not very many of us in the country of women that coach a combined program like this. And so when I found out it was men's and women's, taking that job, it was phenomenal. And it wasn't until even after I left, I realized how phenomenal it was. Basically, we started from scratch with no recruits. And after 7 years of starting the team from scratch, building it up, winning championships, we were 4th in the country at NCAAs, and we had 12 national champions. And this was all at Division II. So I had an opportunity to now coach at Division II, which is a very wonderful, unique experience. It's much different in some ways to Division I and to the SEC and ACC. But it was an opportunity that allowed me to get my feet wet with being a head coach and understanding really what it took to be a head coach, because I knew one day I would get back into Division I.
What was that experience like of obviously building up that program at Nova?
At Nova, it was a lot of fun. I can't even tell you how fun it was. I had athletes that trusted me implicitly. I was very hard on them. Any of them watching this podcast is going to attest to that. I am a very demanding coach, and I expect greatness. So for these athletes to come in with no expectation prior from any athletes prior was really big for these first leaders on this team, and then to build the team that it is now. So I would say that experience was impactful, not only for the athletes who were starting, to learn exactly what it meant to be a student athlete at the collegiate level, but also for me in becoming a head coach and understanding what athletes needed on that level. And then also addressing all of the head coach things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis.
What was it like in 2017 coming to the Miami Redhawks to become their head coach?
Yeah, so the job opened in the summer of 2016, and I applied for it, and I pushed all my chips in. If I'm being perfectly candid, one of my references is not only Greg Troy, but Jeremy Foley, the former head athletic director at the University of Florida. I have great relationships with both of them, and to have gotten this job was really just a dream come true. I certainly was sad to leave Nova. We really loved it in South Florida. Truth be known, we'll retire down in South Florida one day. But to come up to Miami was great because, I was taking over a program. Now, before I got here, it was split into 2 separate programs. Almost for the entirety of the team. There was only 1 year back in the 80s where it was a combined program in which Dave Jennings was a head coach of. So, you had on both sides, there was Dave Jennings, who was the coach for 30 plus years, built a dynasty at Miami on the women's side. When he retired in 2013, Mark Davis took over. That was his assistant, was here for 3 years. And then Pete Lindsay was the head men's coach that had been here for over 30 years, that had won 3 championships, had done such an amazing job, was just such a father figure to many young men on this team. When Pete Lindsay retired, they decided to go into a new direction. They combined the program into one, and then they decided to look for a new coach. So that's when I was able to take the program on. a lot of reasons why it came to be that I came to Miami was that, number one, it was back in Division I, which I'd always wanted to be. Number two, it was in the MAC, which is where is the conference I competed in as an athlete. Number three, it's in Ohio. My family's in Ohio. My husband's family is in Ohio. And it's a combined program. It has all the bells and whistles. Miami is just such a phenomenal academic program, or school, I should say. The academic programs at Miami are just some top-notch programs. So there were so many boxes that were checked, and I feel that those were the major reasons why I came back.
What was it like, obviously, coming to Miami, building upon, obviously, the dynasty and the legacy that the former coaches left?
Well, that took a little bit of time to really fully understand the meaning of that. I mean, there was no doubt that Miami had been such a strong force within the Mid-American Conference and at the NCAA level. Again, if I'm just speaking to the women's side, 17 MAC champions, it is just simply incredible. We're actually celebrating our very first MAC championship in a couple of weeks, the 1982 MAC champions. And I think really understanding what it took to get to that level by each of these coaches, and then to maintain that level by each of these coaches, is something I will always come to want to learn more about. I have great relationships with both of these coaches. I do talk to them from time to time to understand, really their philosophies and what they did to create these types of dynasties and legacies. And I want that. I want that for Miami. I want that for the history of the program, for the athletes that came through this program. I want that for our current team and the future of our team. So it's a really exciting place to be, for sure.
Can you talk about, of course, the 2019 season, taking the men to the first time going to the championships since 2006?
That was such an electric year. We had so many things going for us. We had lost two very, very incredible teams with the Buffalo men and Eastern Michigan's men, which goes without saying. Eastern Michigan is just a force to be reckoned with. For all their years they were in fruition. We were now up against the remaining programs. We held our toes to the line. We had a lot of enthusiasm. We had one athlete in particular that transferred into our program who certainly wasn't the reason we won the championship, but he was a big part of it. And so were all these other athletes that bought in. We had some sayings and we used them. We basically had this saying, our year. So now our championship ring on the side of it says our year. And these young men were ready to win a championship from day one. They walked on campus that year, if not even before. And it was really neat. The meet was pretty close with us in Missouri State, and we were getting down to the end of the meet. And we were still a little nervous, if I'm being honest. And at prelims and all the events, the 200 backstroke, the 100 freestyle, but especially the 200 fly. We had 5 up in the 200 fly. 5 up means 5 in the top 8, which is far more points. We kind of knew we had done the job, and then we literally sat around the diving well while diving was going on after the last individual event before the last relay, and watched our divers light it up. And so, you can't even describe what an electric atmosphere that was, but it was a pretty incredible accomplishment, especially breaking that streak where we hadn't won a championship since 2006.
What has it been like, obviously, for the men's team to have 2 titles in the past 3 years?
Well, it's important to the legacy of the program. It's even more important to building the foundation of the future of this program. And I know that a lot of our leaders from the past, seniors that graduated in 2019 and 2020, and even 2021, really want to see these MAC championships continue on for this program. They're coming to support us at our meets, at our championships. And we always, have these goals in the back of our mind. I mean, I'm surrounded in my office. You can't see this right now, but by our trophies. And anytime an athlete comes into my office, they get to be reminded with these trophies of just how important it is to win a championship like this.
What are some of the accomplishments on the women's side?
Oh, our women have so many wonderful accomplishments. Not only do we have MAC champions, but we have an academic presence on our women's team. Last spring semester, we tied for the top in our department with our 3.55 GPA. We've even been as high as 3.8 when we were asynchronous. With COVID, I just think our women's team has done a great job academically and in the pool. I mean, we had no less than a few years ago, a diver at the NCAA championships that was an All-American all of her years. And so you're talking about a women's team that see all 17 of those championships up on the board, and they want one too. They come to our men's MAC ring ceremony, and the first words out of their mouths is, "We want that too." And so they're pushing harder. They are stepping it up, every day in practice. They're pushing themselves harder, and they're trying to make that come to fruition. So, on top of it, the number of MAC champions we have is pretty astounding, and even the records that we're breaking up on our scoreboard, on our record board. So there's a lot of accomplishments with our women's team too.
What does the recruitment process look like for prospective swimmers looking to play in college and swim in college?
Our prospective athletes that we're looking at right now, we are focused on the juniors in college. Wow. Step back. The juniors in high school. And we're on June 15th, we'll be starting to recruit what are now the sophomores in high school. So we start pretty early. Our recruiting calendar was changed recently within the last few years, which, we kind of feel like in swimming and diving, we need to be pushed a little bit later, but we're working on that with the rules committee. And so our recruitment process will basically be making phone calls to the student athletes on June 15th. We'll be, and beyond that, we'll be calling coaches. We'll be traveling to meets. When we travel to club meets, we'll be able to watch the athletes compete. We contact their club coaches. We contact their parents once it's permissible to do so. We like to know exactly what kind of home life environment that these athletes are living in. So it's a pretty aggressive approach. My assistant coaches, I give complete credit to. They do such a good job of calling our athletes, our prospective athletes, and making sure that they feel valued, of creating newsletters to send out every 2 weeks to our current recruits, our seniors in high school right now that are going to be coming in next year. We want to make sure that they know that, we loved them when they committed. We still love them. We're going to love them as athletes. So, when they get here, and that's something my assistants do a phenomenal job with.
What are some of the things that you look at in swimmers when you're out on these, when you're out going to obviously watch them?
So a lot of it is time-based. We are a time-based sport. So you're going to be looking at what times they're going. But even more than that, we look at their stroke mechanics. So when we're looking at athletes and do they have potential, we look at stroke mechanics. We look at their height. We look at how old they are as a result. It's interesting that, the men are sometimes a little bit, I don't want to say behind. They're certainly not behind, but it takes a little bit more maturity physically, for them to get to where they need to be. Sometimes those young men are not quite that mature physically coming out of their sophomore year in high school. So, we're trying to identify the mechanics and the stroke technique so that we can better assess that. That's not to say every male is like that, but we do get some from time to time.
Of course, what does the official visit look like for these prospective swimmers that are coming to Miami?
Yeah, I think we crush it on official visits, if I'm being honest. That's the credit to our team. Our athletes go all in. They go, basically, one of my favorite hashtags, full tilt into the recruiting process. The other night we had recruits in, and almost our entire team was at bowling with our recruits. So, and we didn't ask for that. We wanted a few people there. We certainly wanted their hosts there, but we had nearly the entire team at bowling to engage with these student athletes, these prospective student athletes. We have dinner with them, with coaches. We have breakfast with them, with coaches and athletes too. And then we do something that's very unique in our program. We have a student athlete panel. We pick a male and a female from each class. And we have 8 athletes, and we sit them in a room with those recruits. Coaches are not present. And now the prospective student athletes can ask the current athletes any question they want. So they can ask about anything, what's the support like from the coaches? What's the coaching temperament? What do you guys do on the weekends? What is a fun day look like?
What's it like, obviously, seeing the recruits obviously tour the facility and see where they'll be swimming their home meets at?
Well, when we tour them through everything, we do try to have them watch us practicing while we're giving them the tour. So when they're watching us, they can kind of envision themselves. So we take them through our pool, we take them through the weight room, we take them through another facility called the Disc, which is our indoor football facility. And those are all places that we do our training. So where they're able to see all those things, and they're able to, visualize it as we talk through exactly what our student athletes do.
What advice would you give those high school swimmers that are looking to become college swimmers?
I would tell them to, work hard, work on their mechanics, be very detail oriented, be very disciplined. I do give a presentation to our recruits when they come in for their recruiting trips. And one of my expectations is being disciplined. So self-discipline means, showing up to practice on time, doing the right things, doing what the coaches ask of you. So, they're going to be hearing a lot about that experience.
What advice would you give those people that are looking to become college coaching and swimming?
My best advice, and I'm very serious about this, is learn from your head coaches, absorb it. There may not be everything that you agree with, but you got to support it and you got to understand it, and talk through it. Because the most I ever learned in my entire college coaching career was watching the coaches at Florida, watching their calls and tells, watching how they coach, watching what they say to athletes, how they interact, how they coach, their ebbs and flows of their tone of voice. Everything they did, I literally soaked up like a sponge and immersed myself into understanding what they did that worked so well. And I took little pieces from each of them. And that's what's really nice is that, coaches looking to be in an assistant coaching role, that's my advice. Being in a head coaching role is, develop the best relationship you can with your administration. There is nothing like it. When you have a good relationship with your administration, there is no conversation that is too difficult because you're honest with each other. They respect you and you respect them. And so, when you're asking for special exceptions or you're asking for needs, they're more likely to want to help you out and be involved in your athletic department. Go to the things and be seen at other athletic events. That goes a long way with administrators.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the Miami Redhawks swimming program?
All right. So I can be found on a lot of different forums. Just my name, Hollie Bonewit Cron, on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. Scary but true. I now got on TikTok. I'm learning it. And then our program, more importantly, we have all those forums as well. Oh, I'm also on Twitter. So our program is on Facebook, but more importantly, Instagram. We update our Instagram almost hourly. I have assistants that work on that. They post different things on not only on our stories, but our actual feed. We're on Twitter, we're on TikTok. So we're on basically a lot of the forums, so everyone can kind of see and be exposed to us. I would say Twitter and Instagram are our biggest platforms for our program.
Thank you again, Coach Hollie Bonewit Cron, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the Miami Redhawks swimming program.
Thank you.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Hollie, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.